So just a couple housekeeping items to begin with. I do have business cards here if anyone wants contact information. It has my email address, my mailing address, my legislative phone number, and also my cell phone. And then I kind of know a lot of you guys here, but I do have, if someone would like to sign up for email updates, you can just put your name and email address on there. It'll go on my legislative email. You won't get spammed with my campaign, I promise that. If you want other information for me to have, you can have that, but I don't send out physical mailings. It's too expensive. But if there's anything else you want to know, just kind of jot it down on there. That's really designed for an email address update, though. Another thing is, it looks like those that wanted lunch got them. Masters is very kind to let me have this meeting here. We've had another town hall meeting here before, and they're always very good, but be sure and patronize this place. These local businesses are very important for these towns, and if they're kind enough to let us have this here, be sure and get yourself something to drink or something to eat either now or in the future. So, I always forget at least one housekeeping thing. Did I forget any of the basic information?
Over to the side.
What's that? No. Oh, here's one thing I'd like to do, since it's kind of a smaller group. And again, I know most of you, but not necessarily all of you know each other. So why don't we just go ahead and go around the room real quick and say who you are, what town you're from, if you have any sort of affiliation that matters to you. So like Sue, Mayor, I don't want to ruin it for you, but that sort of thing. So go ahead.
Ron Sealander from Olivia here.
Okay.
Okay, Sue Hilgert, I'm the mayor of Olivia.
Luke Stodder, I'm the editor of the paper.
Vlad Ryboy, I'm from Hopkins. I'm with the DFL.
Carol Bowdy, I work in Olivia.
What do you do here, Carol? Okay, good. That'll be one of the subjects we want to cover today. Yep.
Yeah, well, where's Olivia?
Tom Crow.
Wonderful. So what I'd like to do is I just have kind of like about a 5, maybe 10-minute intro to just kind of cover a couple of things of what I'd like to say, and then it's literally opening up for questions. And there's no rhyme or reason to it, whatever questions. If we get on one subject, we can stick to that. If you want to jump, that's fine. I do know that in these town halls, if I get a little bit focused on one subject for a little bit long, we might jump just because of the sake of time. We can have further conversations after this if you'd like. As your state representative, I have 2 basic goals. I want to, well, we'll call it 3. I want to represent the people of my district with integrity in addressing their needs and wishes as much as possible, and do so by communicating with whether it's Republicans, Democrats, House and Senate. You'll sometimes see more of a division between the House and Senate. You'll sometimes see more of a division between urban and rural. So I make sure that I talk with urban just as much as rural people. I try not to confine myself. We are blessed with research. We are blessed with an incredible staff that works into the Capitol. So I try to envelop myself with all of that. And then my second goal, so my first goal is to represent you as best as possible with those tools. And then the second thing I try to do is I try to communicate as clearly as possible and as much as I possibly can. I've had some individual meetings with some of you here. I've had other town halls that some of you have been at. I answer emails typically within about 24 hours, usually quicker. Phone calls, for some reason, I can't figure out why, but I tend to drop off a little bit more with phone calls. I just made some this morning that were a week old. But I really want to immerse myself into, because how can I know what's important to you and what's important to our district if I don't talk with you? I believe that I've kept those 2 promises in my first 2 years in office. Now, there's been a lot of conversation, and believe me, I've been out in the communities. There's been a lot of conversation after this session, and I've heard statements like, you get nothing done, or you can't get along, or there's no compromise. And then there was one reference to the tax bill that there was a grammatical error, okay? One of the challenges is when I serve you in St. Paul, trying to explain it without becoming preachy or without becoming condescending or without disrespecting anyone, trying to translate that into a way that I can communicate with you when people ask questions like, is there going to be a special session, for example? So I thought long and hard about this, and I want to use this analogy. I assume everyone in this room has watched Wizard of Oz. And when Dorothy and the Tin Man, Lion, and Scarecrow go before the wizard, there's the big face, there's the flames that are throwing, there's this big bold voice, and he's, who dare come before me, and stuff like that. And that's a very strong reality for them, and it's very clear and present. But when we find out through the meeting, what do we find out? There's someone behind the curtain. What's behind the curtain in the state of Minnesota is what I'm going to try and explain here today, okay? So some of the questions of nothing's getting done, can't get along, there's no compromise, is really not accurate, at least as far as I'm concerned. I will let the rest of the state defend themselves, okay? But I bristle at that because there is a lot that we've got done. So what I hope to communicate here now is some of the stuff that we've done, and then, as I said, open it up for questions. So, first of all, I wrote these in the wrong order, so let me look down here. So here's what I've accomplished. In the past, some of these are in the past couple of years, most of them are focused on this year, okay? One of the first big things that I got accomplished is I got the Appleton prison passed out of the House. Now that's the furthest that I can get it passed. The Senate wasn't willing to hear it, the governor wasn't willing to hear it. But getting it passed out of the House took me over a year to get people in the place to where they were ready to fully support it. And we got it passed out of the House despite incredible opposition for that. We got the Veterans Home passed out of the House. Now we're not quite there, that's in Montevideo. We haven't quite got there yet, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to do that next year. One of the big things that I was very proud of is here that affects this town is Highway 212. The way MnDOT works is they do a rating system on which roads take priorities. Well, the way the formula works, there's certain roads that get a lot of use in greater Minnesota but don't necessarily score the way the system is. And that's okay, it's just kind of, so that they put in sort of a fixer a few years back that's called the Corridors of Commerce. So Corridors of Commerce simply just identifies a road and raises its ranking in the MnDOT ranking of how they determine to do roads. Now, Highway 23, Highway 12, are corridors of commerce. I think it's Highway 14, and there's about one or two others that are in the corridors of commerce. But for some reason, Highway 212 was left off. It had a lot to do with the easternmost part being in the Met Council's purveyance, and so that was a little bit of a problem. But in the legislature this year, in the language of, unfortunately, the bonding bill, I got Highway 212 identified from Chaska all the way to Montevideo as a corridor of commerce, which exposes it to a great deal more money. I can tell you there have been people that have been working on the Highway 212 issue now for probably 10, 12 years, maybe longer. That was a very big deal. We were able to get proper funding. We fundamentally restructured how the nursing homes are reimbursed by the state. This is something that was about 12, 14 years overdue. We worked really hard, got full bipartisan support, and we spent a lot of money so that we can make sure primarily that the nursing home employees are funded properly. One of the things that really struck me most in committee hearings was there was a director of one of the nursing homes somewhere in the state, and they were talking how they were trying to keep their best employee employed there, but this person was struggling with taking another job. And in the end, they lost because that employee took the other job, working as a clerk at a Dairy Queen. When we have people taking care of our elderly, and someone takes another job because it does better by working, no disrespect to a Dairy Queen, but you understand my point, right? So we were able to fundamentally change that, and we were able to bring a lot of money, millions of dollars out here. So I'm very proud of that. Milan Bridge, I won't get into that one because it isn't, but we had sort of an issue with MnDOT. This never went into legislation, but I worked very closely with MnDOT, worked with the community of Milan, worked with the Historical Society, and fundamentally, just so you understand, what happened was they were going to repair the current bridge, but that doesn't help with the commercial traffic. And the community, it was apparent, really, really wanted to replace the bridge. It took about 6 months and a lot of work with MnDOT, but we're going to replace that now. Last year, a big story, the McRae 4-day school week. They wanted to keep their 4-day school week. It works great for them. The Department of Education, the governor did not want that. We worked very hard. I worked bipartisanly. I worked with the Commissioner of Education to work through some things, and we were able to restore that to McRae and about 6 or 7 other school districts. Fort Ridgely, those that know that story, we're going to keep that open through the end of the summer. The buffer bill, which has been a huge subject matter down here, which I have been very vocal, and I'm not a fan of the buffer bill, period, or the buffer law, but I will tell you that we protected the farmers from getting 50 feet, and we got it down to 16 and a half feet. We also got some money to put into the projects in order to do that. One of the bills I'm very proud of that you haven't heard a lot about here was the safe harbor. There's safe harbor for children in human trafficking. Minnesota is, we're in a dubious list. We have one of the highest rates of human trafficking, particularly of children in the state of, in the United States. And I won't go into all the details why, because that isn't what this meeting is about. There is, it's because of the highways, Mall of America. It's also because some of our minority groups, some of those things. But we have a problem with human trafficking, and I've been honored to carry the bill the last 2 years to not only make some corrections in the bill. It was originally passed in 2011, but I've been able to fund it more, including this year where they put almost no extra money in the supplemental bill in Health and Human Services, and I was able to up that. Very important to me. Another thing that I did is very close to my heart. There was sort of a strange law in Minnesota, and it has to do with people that are on the predatory offender list, basically the sex offender list. And the way the law was written, because of data privacy, if there is a child living in the house of a sexual predator, someone that's on the list, Child Protection Services by law was not allowed to be contacted for that. So you could have a child. Why is that close to my heart? Well, my wife, when she was 13 years old, was living in a predatory offender's house, went into foster care, and when she came back, he was living there again, and she had to move back in with him. So that was a very big deal. It's kind of a small law, didn't get a lot of attention, but that's important to me because what's one of the biggest roles of our society? That's to protect children. So I won't go through an exhaustive list. I wanted to give some of those things. Now, one of the things that people ask is, so one of the most common questions is, well, why can't you guys compromise? Which I think the word compromise is sort of a funny term, and because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but I want to address how I have compromised, and these are just a couple things. One of the biggest things I did was I agreed to sentencing reform, which quite frankly, the sentencing reform put some people on the streets that I don't necessarily think should be on the streets. I think we're safe from them, but I don't think they should be personally, but I compromised on that. Another concern I have is those people that we took out of the state prison are just going to the county jails. So you're going to see the Renville County Jail off of the sentencing reform potentially have an increase. But I compromised on that because one of the biggest arguments on the Appleton prison is there's too many people in jail, and if we do sentencing reform, we won't need any more space for prison, which is not a true statement, by the way, but that's what they said. So I willingly and agreed to the sentencing reform, and I voted for it so that we could get that issue addressed so that we could move forward on the Appleton prison. I compromised on $35 million in broadband. Now people say, why is that a compromise? Well, because some people wanted more. My biggest concern with the broadband office, they run great, but the problem is the way the system is set up is it's, in my opinion, like a lot of government expenditures like this, is a lot of money isn't necessarily the way to solve an issue. And my concern is that we can put a lot more money into the broadband issue, but is it really going to address the problems? Well, we had some policy changes, some that I really liked that I think that will better use that $35 million, and I got that because I was willing to go to $35 million. There's some that I'm not so favorable of, but I also know that I compromised because fundamentally, as many times as I said, $35 million is not necessarily, plus the federal has like another $80 million each year that's going into this. Even though I don't think it's a money issue, I know most of you people in the public said this is something that we want investment in, so I compromised on that. Tax relief in our tax bill that I'm very frustrated at the governor over, but there are some really good things that were in that tax relief bill. There was tax relief for farmers. There was tax relief for small businesses like this one. Very real. There's a statewide property tax. You can ask questions later if you don't know what that is. student loans. We're one of the first states, if not the first state, to address the fact that students have huge loans, and we give them a credit towards their state taxes. So I'm very proud of that. Now, what did I compromise on? We also have the tax relief or the working families tax credit. Now, the issue that I have with the working families tax credit is that I think it's sort of like the wrong solution to a problem. We have people that are underemployed, we have people that don't have enough income in there, and so, but when you do this working family tax credit, it ends up typically being a check to them. Again, some of these things that I address are almost a town hall on their own, and you can ask me about this later, but what ends up happening, in my opinion, a good intention on this working family tax relief is actually incentivizing men to not take care of their responsibilities with a woman and their child. There's some of those things that I'm very concerned about. But we wanted to move tax relief forward. That was something that was very important to the governor, or at least I thought, until he vetoed. That was one of the important things. So I said, Minnesota wants us to work together. There are people that want that, so I'm going to accept it. What I will not compromise on, hear me read my lips, no new taxes, okay? There is, and for the recorder, I was being sarcastic on that. But gas tax and the car tabs. I will not support a gas tax. I will not support a tabs. I had research. I wanted to, I asked, someone asked me, they said, how are we going to pay for all those roads we're fixing right now when you have no money for transportation? And that was a very fair and honest question, but it told me that people don't understand that we're doing quite a bit of funding. So I had research give me the total dollar amount that's being spent. In Minnesota, fiscal year 2016, we are spending on transportation $2.78 billion. And the revenue that we've collected this year is up 58% from 2008. So we have been increasing revenue all along. We are spending a lot of money. But the people again spoke and said that we wanted to have more transportation. So in 2015, we put together a transportation bill that we thought was very solid. It did not include increased taxes. It did not include increased tabs because, folks, we don't need the money. We're taking enough of your money already. Okay? We did not need to do that. We had a model by which we could do that. In 2015, the governor said, I'm not going to listen to a transportation bill. I'm not going to listen to a tax bill. Take it over into 2016. So we took it into 2016. Worked on it all session. We get to the end, and this is the other thing that I will not compromise on, is the Senate, with hours to go, said we refuse to pass a transportation bill if it doesn't have Southwest Light Rail. And we said we're not going to go there. And Senator Bach said, then I lose 7 votes in the Senate. Now understand, with a bonding bill, you have to get 60% of the vote. So you can't even, they have to be, the bonding bill, if it passes, has to be bipartisan no matter what. We went out and got 9 Republican senators to vote for that bonding bill to pass it. And in the end, there was one senator, Senator Latz, who went through an amendment with 4 minutes left in session that basically was going to try and stick it to us and say, take this with Southwest Light Rail, and trying to put on us the burden of explaining away why something didn't get done. Things didn't get done, and people are saying, you need to explain to you why we didn't get this done. We've been working on it for 2 years. And one person threw it on the table, and he messed it up. Now people can say, why are you doing this in the last couple of minutes? We haven't. We've been working on it for 2 years. The way the legislative process works is in session, you start here and you always narrow down, so there's sort of a tight time in the end. But we had bipartisan support. We had 92 votes for that bonding bill in the House. Understanding that there was about 6 to 8 Republicans that voted against the bonding bill. So that's how much more we needed to have a bipartisan support. So it was full bipartisan support there. The original bill had enough votes to pass, including 9 Republicans that were going to vote for the bonding bill, and it never made it there. So, a couple other things that I won't compromise on. I'm going to fight for Appleton until we get that open. I'm not going to compromise on that. One of the subjects we don't talk about in Polite Company, but is a very important issue, is I'm going to fight and make sure that we don't have boys and girls bathrooms. We are not going to do that. Now, it's an uphill climb. When you want to talk about something that's nonpartisan, I don't even have the full support of everyone in my caucus on that, but I'm not going to compromise on that. And then the final thing that I'm not going to compromise on are healthcare solutions. When I talked in the beginning about that man that's behind the curtain with the Wizard of Oz, one of the things that we're talking about, can't get things done, they don't get along, they don't compromise. We're not talking about important issues. One of the biggest, there's two huge, I call them 1A and 1B issues here in greater Minnesota. 1A is healthcare, which is what we're going to be talking about, I think, a little bit here, and the incredibly rising cost. Also how MNsure is absolutely broken, and we keep trying to fix it, and we keep getting told we're not going to fix it. So healthcare is the one thing, and the second thing is property taxes on landowners. That is an absolutely bad issue out here in Minnesota. And those are two issues that I am going to fight. And if the governor says that I don't get along and I don't compromise, he's right, because I'm not going to get along and I'm not going to compromise on those things. So that's pretty much what I want to give you an overview of. There's a lot more stuff that happened in the past 2 years, even this year. I will wrap it up by saying this. When we went into this year, because of the construction at the Capitol, we were squeezed into 10 weeks, which we have work that we can do beforehand, and we did. But in those 10 weeks, I was very skeptical that we would get much done, because you can get people, kind of like what Senator Latz did, you can get people to kind of throw sand in the gears, and it can be very difficult to get even the most basic things done in 10 weeks. So I was skeptical that either we get nothing done, or that we would spend a ton of money. Well, we got some stuff done and we didn't spend a ton of money. I was personally surprised. I was very much excited about that. I feel like we worked, when I talked in the beginning about getting along with people in the Senate, getting along with people in the Urban Core, getting along with Democrats, I believe that we really did that beyond my expectations. So I'm thankful of that. We have something that was very highlighted, made a lot of news, kind of like the big wizard there in front, got everyone's attention. They don't work and stuff like that. I'm telling you that we do. And I think for those that are here represented, everyone in this room is represented by Senator Coonan, I think he would agree with me that we found ways to work. He and I had companion bills in the House and Senate probably on a dozen things in this past year, because we wanted to work together for you. So that's all that I have in my prepared conversation, so I open it up for questions.
Well, where's this healthcare gonna go? Up, increase?
I was told by an insurance guy, and you supported this, that the private care is going to go up. But you had also said that you might be able to do some sort of group things, right? You want to explain that a little bit, and then I'll get to the other issues on that. But do you want to address that, what you heard, or no?
Well, the biggest issue is the individual market, which individual market is rural Minnesota. The people in the cities, they're all on groups, 95% of them. In rural Minnesota, we're all on individual policies pretty much, unless you're a school district or a hospital. But that individual market is turned into being, it's out of control. And those rates, when you see it on TV, when they're saying rates are 40% or 50% increases, that's the market that's getting that increase. And what's happening is there's really three levels. There's people that qualify for MA Minnesota Care. There's people that qualify for subsidies, and the subsidies nothing but we're all buying a health insurance plan, but the taxpayers helping pay for a portion of it. And then the third level is the people that don't qualify for anything, and they're just paying the full boat period. Now that subsidy comes from the taxpayer. What's going to happen in this next round of rate increases, these individual rates last year, they went up in Minnesota between 40 and 60%, depending upon your age and stuff. That rate increase is going to happen again this year. And what's going to happen, and I see it from the state level, is the people that can get a subsidy, they're probably not going to see a rate increase, because we're in an election year, and there is no way they're going to allow people to pay more in premium than what they can afford. So what they're going to do is they're going to increase the subsidy those people qualify for. Now your biggest problem, and I've got clients out here that right now are paying anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a year in premium, and they're carrying $13,000 deductibles to do that. So in all reality, they've literally almost got no coverage whatsoever. But they can't afford to go without it because they probably have land, they got assets, you name it. So they got to pay it. But those people that are paying that big premium, they're also footing that subsidy too, or they're footing the MA Minnesota Care System. Now our problem is how do we start controlling this individual monster? Because it's, whether he likes it or not, Obama put his name on it. He calls it Obama Healthcare. But that is the monster, Obama Healthcare, is this individual market.
Well, here in Minnesota,
We call it MNsure.
we call it MNsure, which is, we've got $300 million into that and counting for a system that still doesn't work real well at all. But another thing that we have in Minnesota that most people don't know about, don't understand, I had to be explained multiple times to understand it. We have what's called the Healthcare Access Fund, which, by the way, is ending in 2019. But the Healthcare Access Fund, I don't know if this was its total purpose, but I know its primary purpose was to subsidize Minnesota care. And so everyone that carries a health pays a premium. There was a 2% tax, right? So it was 2%?
Correct.
Yeah, 2% tax that was put into this fund, and that offset some of the costs. And I couldn't tell you the balance on that right now, but it's a pretty big balance. But what the Healthcare Access Fund is sitting there, and because it's a big dollar amount, it often gets rated. Think of it at the federal level when you hear about how the Social Security Fund gets rated for other things. In a way, that's what happens with the Healthcare Access Fund. Now, there's two problems with that. First of all, that can only cover, so like those subsidies, a couple of years back, we dumped a bunch of money. I think it was in 2014. We dumped a bunch of money from the Healthcare Access Fund into it to do just what you said. It sort of suppressed during an election year how much those increases really were. Can't keep doing that. The second problem with that is the Healthcare Access Fund is going away in 2019, and so we don't have an answer for that. So anyway, I'm gonna make sure that we don't go too far onto the healthcare thing, only because, as you know, we had a great meeting last fall and we could have gone on for another 2 hours. So to answer your question directly, what's being done at the state level? We have put, for the second year in a row, we have put, one of the things we can fix is waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Now, there's been some arguments as to how much waste, fraud, and abuse there is in Minnesota. There's been some conjecture because in the entire United States, Minnesota ranks 50th out of 50 on collecting on waste, fraud, and abuse. So that would be an indicator that maybe we can do better, okay? But a lot of people said no, that it's not there. And what we provided for is there's these third-party private companies that go in and find the waste, fraud, and abuse, and they get a percentage off of that. That's how they make their money. But in the other states that we looked at, they were collecting very large sums of money. So that got killed by the governor a couple times. And I'm not sure why, but it has been killed. I can tell you one of the things that we were told in 2015 was trying to search for that money, you're looking for fairy dust and unicorn poop, is what I think the actual quote was, pixie dust and unicorn poop. Well, the Office of Legislative Auditor, which is a nonpartisan, very well-researched, well-respected group, did an audit. Now, here are my numbers because I throw out a bunch of percentages that all pile on top of each other. So what they did was they looked at 4 months of 30% of the program, okay? So looked at 4 months of 30% of the whole public subsidy program. Out of 30% of 4 months, they found a 95% chance that there is anywhere from, I think it was $112 million to $290 million in waste, fraud, and abuse in our public health care system. One of the biggest areas that they're identifying it in is, let's say that you are in MNsure and you pass away, they don't have a way of stopping it. The premiums just keep going. So that's one of the problems that we have. So if we have a 95% assuredness that there's between 112 and $290 million a year, on 4 months, chances are there's something. So we were fought with that, and we said, well, let us go and collect this money. If we collect nothing, shame on us. But if we collect the money, we're putting it into an account. There's a thing in Minnesota called the 5% program. All it is how we funded nursing homes. Well, in care homes, so group homes, things like that, we have not, there all as well, we have not been able to increase paying for those employees. And to do the 5% increase has about a $94 million a year price tag to it. So we said, well, let's go after this waste, fraud, and abuse, and anything that we collect, we'll put into that fund towards a 5% program. And we were told no on that too. So we're trying to fix those things. One other thing that, this is a little bit of an advertisement outside the legislature, so beg my forgiveness if I kind of touch into politics, but Representative Matt Dean, he's the chair of Health and Human Services, and he's tried to go after this stuff. He finally said, enough is enough, let's have government recognize that there is an issue here and the people support this. So he has a petition that's called stopminsure.org. There's a story about Charlie Dunker and his wife that I don't want to spoil the story on, but go to stopminsure.org. You can look at that. There's a petition, but again, I won't talk about that. So we are trying. Actually, you two are the ones that said we should start a petition. Matt Dean took that, and stopminsure.org is what he came up with.
But Tim, wasn't there a proposal this year to turn back that money that we were getting from the tobacco money? I mean, wasn't there a Republican proposal to turn that money back?
No, what there was is right now in the tobacco taxes, I don't know what the percentage is, but along with the tobacco taxes, there's also an automatic accelerator. And accelerators are like automatic tax increases. We have accelerators in a lot of places. With the statewide property tax, there's an accelerator. So whatever you pay this year, you're going to go up the next year, next year, next year. And what we did was we tried to stop that accelerator. That's all that we did. That's what that was.
Hey, Tim, that group 55 to 65 that qualified for MA, now that rep from Northeast Minnesota was able to introduce legislation that was passed. What I'm saying here is that there's a group of 55 65s that got MA that probably didn't need it, but they got it. And the minute they started using health services, their estates got lien slapped against it when they died.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that got in a little mishmash of where that was at the end of the year, but it seemed like that was going to be put in place to end that, so I'm pretty sure it did.
It did, but here's my question for it. Here's my question for it. I'm not really positive that was a good thing.
I know, and I know where you're going with that because you want people to have the responsibility of their expenses, therefore it should go to their estates.
Well, not even that. But Channel 11 did a great article. There was a lady on there that, in the end of the story, she qualified for MA. And she probably had assets of $3 million. All right? So she's got all these assets, but she has no income. The system is based strictly on income only.
And that's
so she's retired, her income is down, she qualified for it, she said, great, I got no premiums, and I get free health care.
And that's one of the things we're trying to fix because what happened last year, and I don't fault people for doing this, so hear me clear, I don't fault you, but what happened last year is in agriculture, people were basically saying, you mean I can buy a piece of equipment and I qualify? Why would I not do that? And I agree. Now here's kind of the politically sensitive thing is we have actually moved towards including assets. That was a bill that was out there. I don't think that did pass, but that was the discussion. So basically when you apply for MA, you include, or Minnesota Care, you include your assets in your application. That's one of the things, that's what you're basically saying. Because right now assets are not, so there's an asset test they call it. We're trying to address that. That's a pretty radical swing, and when you have people that own $500,000, $1 million in assets, and all they hear is that the government's going to include that in something, it's a bit of turgid waters you have to navigate, but we're working on them.
It's almost, when you talk about fraud, abuse, and waste, I still firmly believe that individual knew what she was doing.
Oh, I fully believe that too, and it may have been the recommendation of their insurance broker.
Possible, yeah.
Possible. So I'm going to move on from healthcare.
I just want to say one thing. What isn't fair about that, Tim, when they changed that law is that I am paying $20,000 a year for my individual policy. Yeah, I've got assets and stuff too, but that person that's on Minnesota Care that you were just talking about, that $3 million person, I am subsidizing her her health care. So, yeah, they were worried about losing their kids losing their inheritance, but they're taking it from my kids.
Agreed totally, and that's why we believe the asset test needed to go with that. One of the funny things about law sometimes is you say for this to be good, we need to have A, B, and C, and only A or A and B make it through, so I think there's more work that needs to be done. Because I totally get what you're saying, and you're right. You were the first person that brought it up to me, I'm like, oh, you're right. It's kind of like one of those, you're right. So anyway, I do want to move on from healthcare if that's okay. If there are questions there's got to be a question. I've been doing a lot of door knocking. There's got to be a question on the bonding bill or transportation.
My question for the bonding bill has to do with the process. I mean, the Republicans didn't bring that bonding bill up till 5 days before the end of the session.
And that's not true.
Well,
it's not true.
Well, that's when it was brought.
So
the final bonding bill wasn't brought up till 5 days before.
And you said an important word, final. Here's what happens.
Well, that's when it was.
What day were we given what day did the governor give us a target? 5 days before. So you can't do a bonding bill. Here's kind of, again, this is where I sound like I'm condescending. I don't mean to be. But the way that it works is there's lots of legislation, lots of things that work, but until you have targets, now the House will have a target, Senate will have a target, that's where you hear that we come out with our initial bills. But nothing really gets done until there's what's called joint targets. And that's where basically the House, Senate, and the governor say, this is how much we're going to spend in this area. We did not see that target. And the way it works, at least currently in our divided government with Republican House, Democrat Senate, and Democrat governor, the way it's practically worked, it doesn't have to happen this way, but really we wait for the governor to say, what target do you want? And that has a lot to do with this specific governor, but we do wait for the governor to say, let's sit down. We got that target. As soon as we had the target, all the pieces, the one thing about bonding is it's kind of like pieces of a puzzle on a table or a bunch of things sitting on the table, and you say, well, we'll do this one. So there's about $5.5 billion in bonding requests this year. Well, we're not going to do a $5.5 billion bonding. So what do you put in? What do you take out? But all those pieces are very clear. As soon as we had the target, they went together and they put together a joint bonding bill. Now, I think the House had a version, the Senate had a version, but that's when they get into conference committee. And that was those days leading up to the final day. Now, one of the things that I agree is totally frustrating with me is bills like bonding kind of have to be put towards the end because otherwise shenanigans happen. So you kind of, I don't like this, but it's the way the system is right now. You have to put pressure on. Pressure happens when you have a deadline, right? So they come out with the conference bill, and I want to say that the actual conference bill was agreed upon sometime Saturday. I don't remember what time because we went through Sunday night, right? But for a conference report to be official to go into one of the chambers, it has to have, now I don't know how many they had, but these conference committees typically have 3 and 3 in the House and Senate, or 4 and 4, there's different numbers. I don't remember how many, but for the sake of argument, I'll say there was 3 and 3. So when you come to a conference report agreement, those people in that room, you have to get at least so many signatures from them. Let me go to 4 and 4 because it makes a little more sense. So we had 4 on each side, and you always have a Republican and a Democrat on the conference. If you're in the majority, you have more. That is the true part. So you have the House and the Senate in the conference, and if there's 4, it all depends on what the rules are for each committee, but let's just say for the sake of argument that you need 3 signatures from the House and 3 signatures from the Senate. The Senate did not give us that final signature for 5 hours. We did not get that conference report. I couldn't vote on anything. There was nothing for me to vote until 11:30 at night. I had no choice. I couldn't say, where's my bill? Because it had to get that final signature. Now again, it's part of the chess playing by both sides, and by the way, I know this is what people hate most about government, okay? But that's just what happened. So when we got it, we went through the procedures, we passed what was an agreed-to conference report with 92 votes in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and it went over to the Senate. And kind of the funny thing is if you say this is the House chambers and this is the Senate, by law, you can't digitally send it. You can't say, hey, we passed it. It physically has to be handed from one to the other. And so we had this gentleman, I heard he was 62 years old, but I don't know if that's true, but he's running across over to the Senate, and he sets this down on the Senate. Now, it is with only 15 minutes left, but it's with 15 minutes left with an understanding that this is what we've agreed to. they kind of go through some procedural stuff, and with about 5 or 6 minutes left, Senator Latz said, I have an amendment changing line whatever from 10 to 20, and what it was kind of an innocuous number, but it basically meant we're going to have Southwest Light Rail. There's one inconvenient problem. The House had already passed this, and we were done with business, so we adjourned. There was nowhere to send it back to. So Senator Benson...
But it wasn't midnight yet.
No, it was about 3 minutes left, but we were done with our business.
I know, but that's just a hell of a way of doing anything.
I totally agree, and Senator Latz should have never done it.
That's what everybody's mad about. That's
Absolutely.
what everybody in the whole state is mad about.
Agree 100%.
Right? Right, Rob?
Right, Senator Latz is,
No, I'm not.
I think what he did is an abomination.
I think
So,
the whole process is an abomination. And
Well-
all of it, no, really.
And I think that
Everybody
we can make improvements on it. But when we make improvements, the difficulty is how do you make those improvements?
So what came about with the, I know they were looking into how other states do their process, their legislation process. Whatever came about from that exploratory committee? Because I know they were looking at Nevada and Louisiana and things like that.
I think they're still meeting. I can't honestly answer. It hasn't been addressed in a room that I've been in where we've talked about these are some of the suggestions. So one of the ironies that I view, this is totally my opinion, but one of the things I see is one of the ironies of having two constitutional truths, balanced budget, which I think is very good, don't get me wrong. When you have a constitutional balanced budget and we have a constitutional deadline, which by the way I think is also good because when you have a deadline you get things done. Those are two things that the federal government have a problem with. So I think that's a good thing. But as soon as you put constructs, rules into something, no matter what you do, there are going to be people who try and play the game of that system. So even if we make those changes, okay?
Right, they'll just have to figure out how to play the game.
Let me give kind of, I don't know if this will make sense, but there's been a lot of talk of moving the state primary from August to June. Mm-hmm. No, this will make sense, I promise. So moving the primary from August to June has a certain, people say, well, give more time for a statewide candidate to stay around and say, I'm the candidate and the Democrats or the Republicans, and it says all that sort of stuff. But one of the concerns is that if you move it to June, well, you have an endorsement process, which is very important in the Republican Party, a little bit less in the Democrat. I'm saying it isn't important, but it's a little bit less. They tend to lean on the primary system a little bit more. But an endorsed candidate, if you have a primary early, one of the concerns is that outside forces would have more impact because they could spend a lot of money in a hurry rather than let the process go on. Now, I only use that as a brief example to say that every intention of moving it from August to June has its upsides and downsides. So any changes that we make, I fully welcome. I don't buy the message that we aren't transparent. I don't know how I can be more transparent to this district than I can be. I put my cell phone on my business cards. I put my cell phone on my campaign lit pieces. I don't know how I can be more transparent. So, but we'll look into that.
Yeah, I just think the process has to be more transparent. I think that process has to be more transparent. I don't think that. I just don't think that the way it went about. I think the process has to be more transparent for the people.
Well, and what I would ask is what are, and I don't mean this to be like argumentative. What I mean is what are some of the things? Because when I hear transparency, we allowed people in the chambers in the alcoves to our own personal risk. They don't normally let them there, but because they had construction up in the balcony, so people can get in there. The state office building can get in any time. On my weekends when I'm not there, I come to meetings and stuff like that.
I'm not saying that. I mean, you were accessible to me, and I appreciate that, and I think that. But I think that and I think all the representatives and the senators should be as transparent that transparent to their constituents, and I'm not so sure they all are.
Agreed.
And that's my criticism of the process, and all that shenanigans that happened within that last week and that last 24 hours and that last 48 hours, I think is an abomination to our state, and I don't think it's fair, and I don't like it. And as somebody that is part of the government of this state, I think it bodes unfavorably for us.
And I think
And-
there's good news and bad news, because the good news is the ultimate transparency is that if someone doesn't know what's going on, they can vote that person out. So that's
Well,
one of the,
yeah, and-
but now here's the downside to that though. Of 134 seats in the House of Representatives that are up every year, I would argue that probably, unfortunately, on the high end, maybe 30 seats are truly up for grabs, meaning about 104, let's just round it up and say, means 100 seats are going to go to a Republican or going to go to a Democrat, almost, not entirely, but almost no matter what. So when you have people that are insulated like that, they think differently, don't they? They don't have to answer quite as much, so they tend to, and another thing is then they also tend to stay in office for 16, 20, 24 years. 24 years in office is too long. You don't belong there that long. So I'd love to say get them voted out of office, but it's very difficult.
The other thing is that the process really, it tends for people not to be engaged. It tends to turn, the entire populace of the state thinks,
Isn't
you
it?
guys are a bunch of rum-dums out there and we don't care about what you're doing, and
Right.
and that's really sad. It gives the whole political, I mean, heaven knows we have enough issues with the national
Yeah, heaven
with the
knows.
national thing. We don't need it at the other levels.
And don't hear me wrong, I completely
That's-
agree with your assessment. I actually
Well,
argue
I-
historically, we're kind of like, I'm not saying we're going to have a civil war, but we're kind of a pre-civil war. They didn't get along back then either.
Yeah, and
It was awful.
that's my criticism.
I have a question, though. I'd like to ask a question here. May I?
Yeah.
Yes.
Didn't the Republicans make it clear to the governor and to the Senate that there was not going to be any money for the Southwest Transit System at the beginning of the session? This was not going to be, right?
Yes, and to the degree that about 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon, Senator Bach came to, I don't know if it was Leader Pepin, but she was the one I talked to, so either her or Dowd or both of them, but came and said, we don't have enough votes for the bonding bill. There are 7 Democrats who say no bonding bill without the Southwest Light Rail in it. And so Dowd said, I will get you 7, I'll get you 9 Republican votes in the Senate so that we can pass the bonding bill. If you need more, let me know. And they had the votes there.
So Senator Latz did hold this thing hostage. He derailed it. Would that be?
I want to stay away from kind of the Democrats did this. I pick on the governor a little bit because I really don't like him. So maybe that's even wrong, but I have a problem with him. But when there is a person who acts, when you talk about in transparency, or acts in such a way that I think is unbecoming, I'm going to call him out, and that was Senator Latz. And we could go to his district and say all day long, Senator Latz did this, and it doesn't matter, he's going to get reelected. And so guess what? He's going to do something like that again. So, what are the questions? I got 5 more minutes, and like I said, I hope it's okay, but I can stay until 5 after if necessary. But
So you suppose there is a special session or not?
as of yesterday, no. The governor has said for there to be a special session, there's a few things that will not go off the table. Southwest Light Rail is one of them. The irony is I don't know that there's even enough votes in the Senate for that, because again, you have to get 60%. I don't think you're going to get that. But he says Southwest Light Rail. I'm not exactly sure why he did this, but what we did was we kind of moved the transportation bill into bonding, so it isn't a transportation bill, but there's a lot of road and bridge stuff in there. And one of the things we did when I talk about corridors of commerce, 14 and 12 have 2 kill zones. I mean, they are the highest accident rates in the state. And then there's some expansion concerns about 23. So those 3 literally got money, which is a little bit outside the system. It has happened before. There is precedent for this, but they had money for 12, 14, and highways 23, and he says he will not go to special session if those 3 are funded through that. He wants it off the table. So no Southwest Light, or he has to have Southwest Light Rail. He will not have those 3, and then there's spending. I've seen a bunch of different numbers, but it's somewhere in between $300 and $500 million in additional spending, and it's mostly in the areas of preschool, and then there is ethnic diversity, which is one of his big things. Which, by the way, when you talk about compromise, that supplemental spending bill that we had about 35 or $45 million in ethnic diversity that I voted yes for, folks. And I don't have a problem with addressing the problems with ethnic diversity. I don't think government spending of taxpayer money addresses those problems. But what we were able to do was to put that 35, 35, 45. Hate how I throw those numbers around like that so casually, but it was somewhere in there. We did put them into tried and true programs, as opposed to just throwing money into the system. But he wants more now. I think he can maybe get some votes off of that, but he's not going to get he's not going to get Southwest Light Rail. He's not going to. And if you want to know why, I'll give that answer too.
Well, it's ridiculous when you look at the numbers, the costs. It's ridiculous to even consider that in our state.
Yes.
Where's the big push coming from that when it can't pay for itself?
Urban Core. They want it. They do. Urban Core wants it. Actually, not even all. The suburbs, most of them don't want it. Where that Southwest Light Rail is going, there's 2 lawsuits right now because people don't want it down there either.
Well, you go southern Minnesota all the way down.
Yeah, where they're putting it.
Signs all the way, no rail.
Well, and that's a zip rail. That's a different project. The Southwest Light Rail is the one that goes down to Edina, I think. Eden Prairie, yeah.
Oh.
So, but there's 4 more plans out there also. I haven't seen them, but I'm told there's 4 more plans for 4 more light rails.
What is the cost of a person to ride the light rail?
It all depends on how you ride it, but just $3 to $5. But the cost.
But for that person to ride that rail, isn't it like 20 or?
It's. I'll just tell you that we are subsidizing them in the ballpark. Anyone that rides it, we're subsidizing. I'll give a real wide ballpark, but I'm being kind with this. It's in between $20 and $35 per ride that it's being subsidized. The North Star light rail, the North Star train, which is not light rail but a similar thing. I have the actual number. Every person that rides that, this is the average. No matter how short or how long you ride it, every person that rides the North Star light rail, the taxpayers are subsidizing their ride by $24. So if they go to work and back home, that's $48 a day that we are subsidizing that person to ride that train. I can't go there.
Yeah, you get to a point to where we're piling subsidies on top of subsidies.
But you know, it's the same with what we do with streets and everything. You know, when we do streets in town, we assess a quarter assessment for a street project. You know, we did a $21 million street project in town, and we assessed that a homeowner 1/4 of what it costs to do that.
How many lane miles was it?
What do you mean, lane miles?
So
I'm talking about
the million, because here's the deal is with the light rail, the Southwest Light Rail, I've heard 2 numbers. I've heard 12 miles for 1.6, and I've heard now 14 for 1.82. So take your pick. So let's just say the 12 miles for $1.6 billion. That's over $100 million a mile. So when we talk about subsidizing roads, an average road out here, and again, this is average, but you're about $1 million a mile. Also, once the road is built, that's the expense. Now, with the Southwest Light Rail, not only do you have the operating expense, but for the business owners in this room, you either have deferred maintenance or depreciation, or you call it a couple different things. There's none of that. So when these trains need to be repaired and replaced in the future, there's no money for it. We're just going to have to find it in a new place. So that budget, when I'm saying subsidizing the rail, that's just to keep the electricity on and keep the drivers in the cars. That's it. So, Sue, I love you, and we agree on some things, we disagree on others. The Southwest Light Rail.
Yeah, well, we got a street out here that's collapsed, and we just did it. It was built in 2008, and we're doing it again, and most people are going to have to pay for it again. So
in that transportation bill, we provided a lot of money for towns like.
We're not getting it.
I know, because
we're not getting our
got
LTA
vetoed
this year.
Because it got vetoed.
No, it wasn't in the bill. It wasn't in the bill.
We put
it wasn't in the bill that would have got passed.
You asked for $43 million. You asked for $43 million. You and I had this discussion. We put in $40 million. We're talking about a compromise. I had to choke down $40 million when a third of that goes to Minneapolis, St. Paul. We put in 40 of that $43 million, and the governor vetoed it. On a bill that he, by the way, we structured it so that he wouldn't veto it, and he vetoed it.
No, the bill that would have gotten passed wouldn't have given us very much either. So we're getting less than that.
Yeah.
So No.
Yes.
I have a comment of praise because as you were speaking all the way through, I'm just feeling, you talk bipartisan, which I really appreciate because you can, we listen to the Democrats did this, the Republicans did this, or, we hear it all the time. And it just draws a flag of, okay, do you really understand what's going on? Here we have a person that you're working bipartisan, you see it working, you have some hope, and I think we need to get away from this Democrat Republican, just as you were saying, and you did mention that as you were going on. But yes, I noticed that as you started speaking right away, the bipartisan approach, and I think that's where we need to keep going, and we'll start seeing changes. Because we're all human, we're all in this together, and we all have our own ideas, but we can work through it. And I think bipartisan is a good start.
Thank you. Any one final question or comment? Anyone's answered?